Hello there, fellow model makers, and welcome to the third part of our Hobby Boss 1/32 scale Spitfire Mark 5B build. So far, we have been able to build the cockpit and paint it. And now, it's time to get the engine together. As always, I start off by carefully cutting the engine parts out of the sprue. The kit has the option to keep the engine exposed or closed. Now, I will not be keeping the engine exposed, but I will still put it together out of the box so that you can see what it looks like and decide for your own whether you want to keep it open or closed. Next, I clean up with the hobby knife. The first parts are now glued together. The engine is fairly well detailed. While I'm waiting for the glue to dry on the engine, I use the time to put together the rear wheel. Time to start painting, which I do by painting all the parts black. Please note that I have not glued all the parts to the engine. If possible, I don't glue in the parts that will be painted a different color. This way I can paint them easily and then glue them on, rather than glue them in place and then struggle with a paintbrush painting individual parts. Now, everything other than the engine is given a coat of AK Interactive's Extreme Metal Aluminium. As with the cockpit, I will be using the hairspray technique to add chipping to these parts. I use this photo etch stencil to help paint the rear wheel. Once again, this gives me a clean, quick finish as against trying to hand paint the part. Back to the engine. After the aluminium paint dried, I gave everything a coat of hairspray and let that dry as well. I now paint some of the parts with the same color cocktail that I had mixed for the cockpit interior. The fuel tank is painted red, as indicated in the instructions. I'm not sure how accurate that is, but it will definitely add a splash of color, and I like that. Once the paint was dry, I started chipping it. I moistened the paint with water to reactivate the hairspray, and then keep chipping away with a brush or a cocktail stick. The engine is dry brushed with Revell's aluminium. I load my brush with the paint and then wipe away all of it. Really, all of it. And then brush the part with it. Each passing stroke adding a tiny bit of residual paint to the part. All the parts are now given a coat of clear varnish. Once the varnish is dry, I give the parts a wash with Tamiya's Panelline accent color. The extra wash is wiped away with a Q-tip or cotton bud dipped in odorless spirit. Time to glue all the parts together. The engine is fairly well detailed, but I don't think it has sufficient details to leave it exposed or open as it is out of the box, especially considering this is a 1/32nd scale kit. If I was leaving the engine exposed, I would add more details like pipes, wires and such. In other words, out of the box, this engine is the perfect platform to scratch build details and make a smashing engine. We had already completed the cockpit earlier, so now I can glue everything in place and close the fuselage halves. But it's a little tricky. There are many sub-assemblies that have to be glued in, and aligning them all at the same time may prove challenging. So what I do is, I first glue in the cockpit parts to only one half of the fuselage. The parts are aligned and the fuselage halves are closed. The halves are held together by some masking tape. The cockpit parts, remember, are glued only to one side of the fuselage. I now wait for the cement to cure. Because the parts were glued only to one side and the fuselage halves were not glued together, I can now open them. The cockpit parts are aligned and glued in place on one half of the fuselage. And now I can focus on the engine. This time I glue everything together. By gluing one subassembly at a time, the process of gluing the parts in and aligning them properly becomes a little easier. Right, fellow model makers. Next time, we will put rest of the kit together and clean it up to ready it for painting. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please do like and subscribe. Till next time, good luck and happy modeling.